welcome back to yet another flute tip of the week. So I know that I have some Instagram followers. You'll have seen that last week I had tried to turn my apartment into a kind of quasi-recording studio. Had some recorded auditions that I was doing, and yeah, so last week I kind of ended up spending about 3 hours a day on piccolo and an additional 2 on flute, just because I had so much rep I had to do. In consideration of this, I've been taking yesterday and today off to allow my face to reset. So I hope you don't mind that this week will not be a demo week. However, we're going to be talking about playing the flute in relation to different instruments. I'm really excited to talk about this. Ensemble work is basically why music was invented. It's something that we can do all together, it brings people closer, and there's always so much more you can do when you have more instruments and more musical ideas than when it's just you all in your onesie. And so, my fellow fluties, let's talk about those other instruments. Play duets with other instruments to better understand the varying approaches to creating a well-balanced ensemble. Now, this isn't just talking about balance in terms of tuning or dynamics or stuff like that. What I mean is we're going to be focusing on which instruments help improve which parts of your understanding of how to play. First, let's talk about my favorite instrument to play with, the clarinet. Now, most instruments will have the same tuning understanding as the flute, where if you have more of an air stream, it'll tend to go sharper. If you have less of one, it'll go flatter. This is in relation to the dynamic, the range of the instrument, and also just how much breath you have left. But what those of us who play in orchestra frequently will realize is that the effect of these principles is essentially reversed when it comes to the clarinet. And so when you're playing duets with the clarinet, this really helps you learn how to react properly in terms of tuning. So if you guys are on opposite ends of the register spectrum, or you're in unison and doing varying dynamics, then this allows you to have an automatic reaction not based on the knowledge of your own instrument, but on a honed understanding of the qualities and the characteristics of the clarinet. Next, we have the oboe and the bassoon, the double reed instruments. So when you're working with oboe and bassoon, the things to really think about are the attacks of notes and the effects of register and dynamic in relation to tone color. This will really be focusing on the entries to phrases where they need a bit more air to be able to properly articulate at the start of a phrase. So you can't exactly play a quadruple piano entry which then is repeated on the oboe or the bassoon, because it's going to be a lot harder for them to be able to get it to speak super cleanly, and you want to make sure you don't leave them hanging. When you're working with brass instruments, some good things to focus on are articulation and note length, especially with detached notes. Now, with the articulation, trumpet players especially often have incredible double tonguing and also triple tonguing. This can give you some perspective on how you use your own air when it comes to your articulation, and also in terms of balance. Because if you're in the kind of phrase where the brass instrument is very prevalent, you want to make sure that you're going to match exactly how hard the articulation is, let alone the speed of it. And as in many other ensembles, you will focus on the length of your note and when the duration should end. Next, we have strings. Now, you can basically apply any of the factors from the other instruments that I was just talking about to working with string instruments. But one thing that is different is that you're able to have a visual cue of when their notes are starting and ending. So it's important to start learning how to use your eyes as well as your ears when you're trying to start a phrase together. And this is going to be extremely useful in orchestra. So you'll be watching the concertmaster way at the front and just waiting for the bow to move, especially if you have a solo section where the strings are very quiet, or really you're just trying to get any passage to be super clean and start and end together. So learn how to really appreciate that you're given this visual cue. Finally, the last instrument I'm going to talk about is the harp. In my 7 and a bit years of being in the UK, I have never escaped more than a few months without playing with a harpist. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. I've ended up with so many fantastic friends just because I keep getting thrown into harp ensembles and stuff like that. But what was really fantastic about working with these people is watching for their pedal changes. And the biggest implication this has is in relation to the tempo that you take for the piece. So when you're not so familiar with playing with the harp, the first thing you should think about is how long they need to be able to change the pedals, how many pedals need to be changed. You're gonna need to give them time to move their feet. I mean, give them a break. Like, there are so many buttons they have to push. It's like if you had 10 gears on your car instead of 5. These are just examples of things to listen for when you're working with these instruments, because it'll give you a better awareness of everything, and this will be a major time saver, especially in orchestra rehearsals, because if you're able to understand how each instrument is working around you and how you can work with them, then you don't need to spend as much time worrying about intonation, trying to figure out where everyone is starting, and also it gives you a much better appreciation for what you do with your instrument. So again, that tip was play duets with different instruments to better understand the varying approaches to creating a well-balanced ensemble. I hope you find this week's tip helpful. I know I haven't done a proper talking head in a while, but think of it this way. People kept asking if I was in a bad mood because I couldn't smile properly. My smile was this. Piccolo problems. So until next week, flute happy and ensemble happy. Lately, I started to think I might need to start donating some of my books because I got no space left on this shelf. They're making it to my windowsill, and that doesn't even count all of the bookshelves that are covered in my upstairs, and I kind of don't have any space left for my music. Anyone wants some books? I got you covered.